Morning, listeners. Welcome back to another episode of the Utande SME Plug. I've got with me today the gentleman that we started the conversation with. I've got Mr. Hardon Ziwenga, who is a business owner. He is running an organization called Solutions Plaza. I've also got Brian Samakomva from Utande Internet Services. He is a product manager who is handling all things security for the business. My name is Rumbi. I am in the marketing department at Utande Internet Services. So we started an interesting discussion in the previous episode where we were saying what is the value, what's the importance of cybersecurity to small businesses. So today we are going to touch on something that is actually a growing trend. It's the human factor in cybersecurity, because the belief is that these cyber attacks don't happen in the air. They don't just happen randomly. There's got to be a human element that comes into cybersecurity. So I'll just start with you, Brian. What's your take on this overall human factor playing a part in cybersecurity?
Thank you, Rumbi. So the weakest point in any network is the human.
Not the password.
Not the password. It's the human. So the human is the one that creates the password, the weak password. So it starts off with the human. And the hackers have learned that. Hence, the attack is now actually on the human. So what they have done is they come through masquerading as they are genuine, just to fool the human brain. And the human brain being relaxed, sitting on a desk and going about their business every day, they're most likely to click and give everything away to the hackers. So it comes down to the human being the weakest point of any network. The networks are now secured with firewalls, are now secured with the passwords, with authentication, with everything. So it's now tiresome for the hackers to even try and connect to a network via the gadgets. So they have targeted the human being as the weakest element in the network.
And Hardon, do you also subscribe to this? Is it the human element? And what are your thoughts around this?
I relate to that so much. Particularly enticing messages coming through email to give away SMS even. Yeah, I've gotten that. Very enticing, and some of it's lurid and sexual. Some of it is a promise of lots of money with broken grammar, if I may say.
So what is it with the broken grammar and these hackers? Is it because hackers can't spell? Is that the general thing we're going with here? What is it with the bad spelling?
So I think, like I mentioned earlier on, they are masquerading. If you look at some of these emails are coming through from non-English speaking sources. So to them, they think they have hit the jackpot in their grammar. But to us, we are an English speaking country, and we know grammar. We are learned.
So that's a good point, Brian. But what if we are not, in this English speaking country? I mean, we are a learned nation, but there are certain pockets that can fall prey.
You've been on Facebook and you've seen these bogus messages coming through from Nigerian sources. Have you seen the English?
Yes, I have. I think I received one yesterday and I showed you.
That's not our traditional English at all.
So in terms of what can the human do? What can we do as small businesses to protect us as small business owners as well as our employees? Because those are the humans we're talking about in this instance. What can we do?
I think from the first episode, we rightly spoke about this, and my friend Hardon here can relate to it, that we need awareness.
Okay.
In as much as ICT is not your core business, maybe you are a farmer or you sell iron steel, ICT is going to be the last thing on your plate. But then if you do use the digital platforms, you definitely need to be trained on how to use those platforms. They are there to make our lives easy, but then they can also damage our reputation as well.
Yes, I think people in the ITC security space have a lot of work to do. I mentioned in the previous episode the visibility. We don't see them. We don't hear them. Maybe because back then it wasn't much of a problem, but we need awareness. We need, I think, some kind of curriculum even at university, because it's getting so big.
Yes.
Everybody is going digital, and that's where we are going.
Exactly. So while we go, I subscribe to the awareness and, as you said, the curriculum, even the basic training. Let's have the basic training when someone comes in to your organization. Maybe I think this comes to coming up even with a policy. What is the cybersecurity policy in this organization? Whether it's a small business, whether it's a two-man, yes, I think there should be a policy, some sort of awareness. But I think the sources of where you get this information is vital. But thank you for bringing that up. I think this is one of the platforms where we want to just make people aware of the dangers, especially if you don't have your cybersecurity solutions in place.
Yeah, it's prudent, definitely, Rumbi. I think my approach would be, regardless of your line of business, at least have one person in the organization that understands these solutions and impacts everyone else with the knowledge. You can take the whole company out for awareness, but you need that one source that people always refer to if the service provider is far away. So then the service provider then impacts directly that person, and then they disseminate that information within the organization.
Is this the one source that you fire if things go wrong, right?
This is the one source that we will have reference to.
Okay.
When we need any cybersecurity knowledge.
Okay.
Let's not think of the worst. No one is going to get fired.
Just to also add, in an organization, typically you need somebody accountable and responsible, so that there is laser focus on making sure we are all secure.
Accountability is key.
I think some would call them the traditional IT person within the organization.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So we need one of these in most small businesses.
Definitely.
I think maybe if you don't have one, what could be, how can this happen? Like, for example, if you're just a small business that just specializes in, maybe if it's just sales, how can we bring in that IT person without spending too much money?
Thank you very much, Rumbi, for that question. So Utande has got a solution for that. We have a cybersecurity awareness program that we run throughout the year. So this comes with awareness games that we send throughout to that particular individual's network, and just always monitor their behavior when it comes to cybersecurity. To security use, basically. So what we do is we come in, we plug into your network remotely or on site. And we run these programs, and we give you reports every time as to who your baddest player is within the organization. Okay. This is not to victimize anyone, but then basically to impart knowledge and help them behave better when they're on the network.
So to all our listeners, I think what Brian is trying to say is we are playing the watchdog role.
Yes.
In this instance. And if you do need some more information on this, we will put this in the comments below. And you can also reach us on any of our platforms. I just want to take you back to the human factor that we spoke about, to something very basic, coming up with a password. How do I come up with a good password?
So I think
I suppose now you're laughing because I feel like you know my password. It's just the one password.
By looking at you, I think I know your password already. Being a hacker by profession, it's very easy to guess passwords.
Okay.
So I would run by your second name. Many people use the second names as the password, or their surnames, or their husband's names, or their spouse's names, basically. And some use their date of birth. And some use the simple password is password 123. That's the weakest password I can ever guess.
Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Exactly. So there are password generators, password generator softwares that you can actually download. They generate the one-time password at that particular point in time when you're logging into a system. When you log in with that password, then that's it. If we look at our banking systems, they've given us the banking cards where it generates a one-time code. It's the same thing that
the authentication.
Exactly.
Or the OTP, yes.
So the username is the same, but then your password changes every time.
Okay.
You don't necessarily need to type it in yourself. The manager will do that for you. There are reputable password generators that are out there. And for more information, we can always share as well.
Okay. How often do you change your password, Hardon, just out of interest? I'm not playing the watchdog role
No,
at
it's
this
fine.
point.
I hardly change my password for fear of forgetting.
Yes, that is my fear as well.
And that's really a bad practice, because if you are always on banking sites, if you're always doing your social media, trying to protect your identity and everything, besides the two authentication, you should always change your password regularly. I change my passwords every 3 days. Because I have a bandwidth manager, and it's also the sensitivity of the systems that I get into. I definitely have to change my password every 3 days. But for a general person, you can change your password weekly if it's not cumbersome.
A general person?
Yes.
Okay, how do we make it easy for someone to change their password? Because when you say every 3 days, I think days is rather granular. I'm thinking every 3 years. How can I change my password every 3 days, but still it's not a headache to me? I know in the previous episode you mentioned that we need to download a password manager.
Yes.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. So in this password manager, I will then be able to then get a new password every 3 days.
It generates a password for you, and the longer your password is, the harder it is to hack. And your password should have ordinary alphabet letters and special characters. That's the hash, the @ the exclamation mark, the colony. All those are special codes. So basically, if you have your password with alphabet letters and special codes, then your password is strong.
Just out of interest, do I need a password to get into the password manager?
It's up to your setup.
Okay.
And maybe just to reiterate as well, a stronger password is anything that is 8 letters or more.
Okay.
8 characters or more.
So my middle name? No.
No. You can put in your middle name, but put in special characters. Put the hashes and the ats and capital letters.
Okay.
And put a comma in between, just to be safe.
Okay. I want to talk about the human nature and some of these bad habits that we do. We talked about the not changing your password. What are some of the things that we can avoid doing, Hardon, as even just as individuals, not going into business, but since we're talking about the human factor, what are some of these bad habits that we do? We talked about the not changing your password, storing your password in the wrong place, using your second name or your spouse's name. What are some of these things that we do that become human nature but are actually wrong?
Sharing passwords with spouses.
You said with spouses.
I share passwords with my child.
But not your spouse.
I do share. She knows all my passwords.
So this is potentially dangerous.
I think so.
Listeners, do not share your passwords with your spouses. I don't know how we feel about that.
Let me come in there and demystify that. So sharing your password with your spouse is not a bad idea at all. But I think it comes down to how regularly you change those passwords. I think it's a joint effort between you and your spouse to understand that there is an issue of security in the passwords that you have shared amongst yourselves. So basically change those passwords. Make it more regular that you change it, because if you use them on your computer and then she goes and uses it on her own computer and saves it on her computer, or either of you are not practicing the not saving password policy on your computers, then it becomes an issue. But if you do save, which is a bad practice, always change it every 3 days. No.
So I know we were laughing about the spouses, but I think there is a potential, danger to say, if anything does happen, and maybe you've got sensitive material from your workplace, or there are some instances. I don't know whether you've noticed that there's an ongoing trend where people are just taking pictures of classified documents. Whether it's even from the government, whether it's from, like an email maybe that has been sent by a CEO to their staff members. That's something that can be a danger. So I know we were laughing about it, but how as a person can you safeguard this information, this organization's information, but keep it, how can you not be reckless with that? What are some of the things that you can do?
I had a question before. We are talking human factor. This was to Brian. How do we come up with policies, human factor of these fishing expeditions by hackers? Because this is human factor. How do you control that together with complementing with firewalls and endpoint security?
Thank you for that, Hardon. So it comes down to awareness. That's how we can resolve that. So first and foremost, the users need to be trained. We need to train them on awareness. As much as we can have firewalls and everything, like you said, the human factor being the weakest will need to be trained. So once the human factor is trained, then it becomes second nature to understand security in the network. Like I rightfully said, our training programs give you a 4 years program of understanding cybersecurity. We run programs that have games in it as well, just to trick the users and help their conscience be more aware of hacker trends onto your system. That could be phishing, that could be social engineering or anything, but they come around to impact your brain with more of a prototype of a hacker and understand how hackers think and how they want to get through to your network. I could call it paranoia to some extent, to then be always aware that someone is watching and trying to get your information.
Is this, you mentioned the tests, is this the vulnerability assessment test? That's a different...
That's a different level. So we start off with the awareness.
Okay.
This is basically for the human factor. Vulnerability
and Utande
assessment
does do this training?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll just demystify vulnerability assessment. Is basically assessing if your systems are secure enough from the public.
Is this key for the human factor element, or even for small businesses?
This is more to their systems.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So I need to know how strong my system is against attacks.
Yes.
Okay. How long does the test take?
So Utande, depending on the size of your network, then defines the duration of the assessment. If your network is smaller, then the shorter time it would take. But then Utande also has a program that is running on every 3-month basis for your systems to make sure that it is assessed and it is watertight.
Okay, I think that's important. It's good to. It's like water testing, something. Just if something is waterproof.
Definitely.
You buy a new watch, you just need to jump into the pool to check if it actually
is
not
waterproof.
Is waterproof.
Definitely. I think I'll just come back to you as well, Rumbi and Hardon. We were speaking about company information on a computer.
Yes,
we sharing passwords
habits.
And how best we can safeguard that information. There is a process of encrypting the data on your computer. So we sell encryption as a service. That your data is encrypted in storage and in transit.
Okay.
So that it cannot be deciphered by the hackers as it's transferring from your computer even to your colleague's computer via email or any data transfer application you're using. So we sell encryption as a solution. So even if your computer is stolen, whoever is stolen it does not have the decryption key, so they cannot read the information on your computer.
Okay. So this is key for businesses.
It's very key for businesses.
To be able to encrypt your
data.
data.
So we can encrypt your phone, we can encrypt your data as well.
Okay. In terms of I'll go back to the human factor again. What are some of we were laughing about this. Maybe do you have examples of some of these messages that come on the phone? Do you have one that you could share, Brian?
So, like I said earlier, we are very reluctant to open messages that are enticing, messages that have a financial implication. Looking at nowadays with the hardships, if you get a message that says you've won a few dollars, or for you to win so much, you have to do a very simple task as 1, 2, 3. But then if you then come down to looking at that email, there are so many factors that actually shows that email is bogus. If you look at the actual spelling of The grammar is what we just spoke about. The grammar, yes. If you look at the source's email address, it definitely doesn't speak anything of the company that is actually running the promotion. You can have an email at gmail.com or it is sakura.com. Yet they are talking about fuel. Yet they're talking about winning the lotto. If it was a lotto company, then it was going to have its own domain name there to show that the email is genuine and it's coming from them.
So you're saying one of the ways we can tell is that grammar, first of all,
yes.
But that domain, we should look at the domain.
The source email address,
okay.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yep.
And what are some of the, maybe give me an example with like for example, if it's Utande, if it's a phishing email, what would it look like?
So if it's, for example, if it's coming from Utande, definitely it's probably coming from marketing at Utande. Mm-hmm. But then you'll find that email address doesn't spell anything about marketing. Okay. It says Godfrey at Utande. And then if you see the spelling of Utande, instead of UTANDE, it's spelled as UTHADE. That's not Utande. But then at a first glimpse of that email address, you will see it as genuine. But then we need to pay serious focus on that and read to detail so that we understand the source of all this scam coming.
Okay, are hackers able to take my domain name to use utande.co.zw?
No.
They're not able to do that.
No.
So I think that's good news. That's good news for small businesses.
Unless they hack into your system and then the source of the email is sitting right on the computer that they send it out through, but they do not have rights to your domain, so they cannot use it.
So we are safe there.
You are safe.
Okay. So I received this message yesterday. It says it came from an Econet number, actually, funny enough. It says your mobile NO has won 850,000 reward in PepsiCo COVID-19 mobile draw 2022 in USA, to claim award, send code PEP0921, your name to email tollsrep@gmail.com. This came in at 1818.
So first and foremost, let's try and demystify that email.
Mm-hmm.
It says your number is 1.
Yes.
Numbers belong to a human being. If it's definitely from Econet, they've got a database of who owns the number. So they should come out and say, Rumbi, you've won.
Yes.
Not your number.
Exactly.
First and foremost. And then usually when these promoters send through, when these service providers send through an episode like this, it's definitely from so and so, not from a number. Right now we don't have where it's from. It's just a number that is sent through.
It's just a random
number. It should
number.
say customer care or something like that, or
Yes.
the promotion that they're running.
Mm-hmm.
And then why would Econet use a Gmail address, yet they're a registered company?
And why is it a Gmail address and it's saying USA, COVID,
Exactly.
Pepsi? That's too many red flags. Too many red
Too many
flags.
red flags, true.
But look, I looked at the 850, but I didn't click.
Oh man, you broke.
So I don't know, Hardon, have you gotten any of these messages before? And what are some of the ways that you then protected yourself and you saw that, oh, that's a red flag?
I have received a lot of them. I've lost count.
I think during COVID, during this pandemic, these hackers are getting busier.
Oh,
you
yes.
know, they've got more time to just be sitting and drafting these messages.
A lot of them. So now I'm aware that they just call them silly messages. Most of them attempt to get my details.
Okay.
That's the bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
So I tend to totally ignore, don't even open.
Okay.
The typical ones, I suspect they are Nigerians.
That's the biggest origin.
I feel offended.
Sorry.
I feel offended.
Sorry, West Africa. They'll bring in a picture of a beautiful woman who's desperate to give out money.
Yes.
You look at the grammar now, all those red flags you're talking about. So because I'm aware, I tend to be careful about those messages, fortunately. Because
as we rightfully said, awareness.
I think that's what's coming out of this conversation. Awareness. And then maybe just taking us back to the bad habits. If you notice when you log into your Gmail or you log into any account, it says save your password, so that for the future you don't have to log in. Is that a bad habit or is that convenience?
So we spoke about this earlier. Saved passwords is never good practice.
It's never a good practice.
It's never good practice.
So I shouldn't save my password.
Oh.
Okay. So I should just use my password, the password manager, to manage my passwords. No saving of passwords.
No saving of passwords.
Huh.
What happens if you lose that computer and someone opens it? Because most people don't think it's best practice to even have a password on their computer when you initially log into your computer. And if this person has picked up your computer, that means they have access to your Gmail, they have access to your email database, they have access to your information in the Gmail. On all threads of emails that you've been writing out and sending out, and those that you've been receiving. With all that, then that hacker is empowered to damage your reputation and take over your life, if I may say.
Yeah, and even if it's that's when they start posting things on your social media platforms, masquerading, sending emails to customers. I think Hardon actually mentioned that sending emails to customers, masquerading as you, the business owner. So I think we should watch out for that. Maybe as we close, how do we develop a security mindset? I know we said awareness, but what are some of the key things as we close this episode? How do we develop a security mindset?
I'll go first. So I won't run away from the awareness. So awareness brings your mind to understand what vulnerabilities they are always. And as we rightfully know, the human brain is only eligible to what it's trained to do. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the more you train it not to open phishing emails with certain trends, and always update on those trends as well. And this is done through awareness. So like I rightfully said, I would never run away from the word awareness, because this is where we get information as to the new trends that are coming up always in cybersecurity.
And then, Hardon, your parting shots on developing a cybersecurity mindset, rather.
I think it's a reverse of what he's saying. We are generally ignorant of the dangers of not being secure, and not doing the right things. What are those right things? How do we prevent hackers or thieves, fraudsters coming into my space? So it is basically awareness and having correct habits. So we must be corrected from ignorance, bottom line.
Thank you for that, gentlemen. I think if our listeners are with us, the three things that I picked are awareness. That is what we need as small businesses in order to prevent cyber attacks. We need to know what these attacks look like. We need to be able to define them, to be able to recognize if something has a red flag. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Just keep glued to our pages, listeners, to feed into the next Utande SME plug. We are on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Thank you.